What's good, everybody? Welcome back to BTM, to the Basketball Time Machine, the podcast with former NBA players about former NBA players. Before we get to today's guest, just a little reminder, if you want to hear more podcasts like this one, just make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get always notified once we upload a new video. Having said that, let's go. Today's guest played in the NBA from the early to the mid-90s. Cory Crowder, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you today?
Can't complain. So, do you remember your first NBA game?
No. I don't because I remember the first exhibition game, which was officially my first NBA game. But after that, everything is like a blur. Everything just moves so fast,
Okay, tell me about that exhibition game then.
I was nervous. I was nervous to be on the court. I was nervous to be there, but I was very happy. I was happy that I actually, because I didn't know if I was going to make the team until you get through with those 5 or 6 exhibition games. So, it's like your whole life is flashing before your eyes if you're going to be able to stay in this realm and be able to play with these guys,
How difficult is it for a player who didn't get drafted to actually make it to the NBA and staying on an NBA team?
Well, and that's the whole thing that I try to educate these kids on today, is that I came in during the era of Michael Jordan and made it from a small school as a free agent. And you're talking about difficulty. Let's look at a scale from 1 to 10. And the difficulty of a player doing that is probably a 50, So I was happy. I was a bit lucky, but I worked my rear end off, and I knew I belonged there. It didn't matter what college I went to, how small the student size is. And I tell people today, once you get between the white lines, it doesn't matter what's your name, what's your color. It's the only thing that matters if you can play or if you can't.
Yeah. So you played with 2 Hall of Famers, John Stockton and Karl Malone. How intense were practices with these guys?
Those guys never practice. What do you mean? The veterans back then, they would come in and get in a lot of shots, especially if they played a lot of minutes. We'd probably go through some scouting reports, but they didn't really have to go at it real hard every day. Now, the people who didn't play a lot of minutes and rookies like myself, that they would practice the living devil out of us. So we really had some competitive practices, but the superstar, all-star guys rarely had to put in a lot of time.
All right. So talking about your teammates, who of the guys helped you the most?
I would say on that team we had David Benoit, Eric Murdoch, Isaac Austin, and myself were rookies. And so I would say those guys helped me because we were so tight and we hung out together all the time that anything that came up, we were able to help each other get through it.
All right. So you were undersized for a small forward back then. Therefore, you had to guard some of the greatest shooting guards to ever play in the NBA. How tough was it for you guarding the elite of the shooting guards?
Jerry Sloan was a great defensive coach. And one of the principles that took me throughout my career is the one thing that he taught me was you really only have to play defense for 3 seconds. If you can concentrate for those 3 seconds, because by the time, if the defense is set up right, you're going to have help. And so it was difficult. I never got to play a ton of minutes against a Michael Jordan's per se. I wish I could have got on one of the posters so I could be seen for the rest of my life of him dunking on me, But it was a good experience, but it was my job. So I had to take it serious and do the best I could.
The Jazz made it to the conference finals in your rookie season. What do you remember of the playoffs?
It was very intense. I think we should have won that series and went up against Chicago then. For whatever reason, Portland beat us in Utah, game 7 or 5 or whatever. I don't remember that. But it was interesting. It was exciting. I really wanted to go to the finals, which would have been great my first year, but we didn't. But we had a lot of fun along the way.
Okay. You just mentioned you played against the Portland Trail Blazers, if I remember correctly. Clyde Drexler, who was probably one of the best shooting guards to ever play. What was so special about the Portland Trail Blazers? Why do you think they made it to the finals?
Oh man, they had Terry Porter at the 1, Clyde at the 2. They had Buck Williams, who was a very good defender. They had Clifford Robertson down there. They had Kevin Duckworth. I mean, they had every position. They were locked and loaded, man. So to play against and don't forget, what's his name? Curse. What's his first name? The Curse guy, Jerome Kersey.
Oh, Jerome Kersey, yeah.
And they had Jerome Kersey. So you're talking about 7 guys that are legit NBA All-Stars on that starting 5, and then you got the 2 backups coming in. So, I mean, they were a tough matchup for us.
You mentioned Jerry Sloan earlier, who was a great defensive coach. Even though the Jazz never had more than 2 superstars, the Jazz always seemed to be a yearly title contender. What was so special about Jerry Sloan as a coach that made the Jazz successful year by year?
Because Jerry would bring you, if you weren't doing your job, he'd take you outside and fight you. That's a joke. That's a joke. No, Jerry was... They had a very good system there. Jerry was a modern day Popovich, where he held everybody accountable, even Karl Malone, even John Stockton, And so that was one of the things that made us very good, because you couldn't slack on your job, because Jerry would hold everybody accountable.
So after your rookie season, you played in Europe for 2 years before you returned to the NBA, playing for the San Antonio Spurs. How did you fight your way back into the NBA?
I mean, you just basically you get a tryout, and they need a player to come in. I went through the CBA first, and then San Antonio picked me up for a 10-day contract because one of their players got hurt. And then after I couldn't stay in the league, I decided to just go ahead and make my career in Europe.
So that Spurs team that you played on had David Robinson, Dennis Rodman, Moses Malone, Terry Cummings. So we're talking about true NBA legends. Who impressed you the most?
Moses Malone was one of my best friends. He passed away 2 years ago on me. The one thing I stuck out about Moses was here's a guy that was for sure a Hall of Famer. And why he would like a guy like myself, who was going to be there for only 10 days. But we became very, very, very good friends, very close friends. And so I miss him. I thought about him the other day. I wish I could have picked up the phone and called him just so I could talk to him for a little bit. My nickname, he'd always call me Cookie Head. And so he'd always pick up the phone. He'd say, Cookie Head, what you doing? And, he was a good guy. Moses really influenced me a lot on that team. He took care of me. We hung out a whole lot. And, and I miss him. Now, Dennis Rodman was as crazy as he is perceived to be. Everything you see is true. But the one thing that stuck out about Dennis Rodman, if you come to practice 2 hours before, he's already on the treadmill running. He go all out in practice. He's on that treadmill after practice. Now, he was one of the most conditioned athletes I've ever played with or against. And for that, I had mad respect for that guy.
Nice. So looking back at your NBA career, what was your personal highlight, the best event of your career?
One was to go back home to Atlanta, because I'm from about 45 minutes west of Atlanta. To go back home and play in front of my friends and family was number one, probably. I don't remember how I did it, but scoring my first basket was probably number 2, and then probably making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals and be able to play on a team where I still have some friends there, but some friends that were born from my time with that team. And probably now that I'm older, coming back and having my son play for the same team that I play for is probably the best thing that ever happened for me.
Yeah, that was my next question. How proud are you of your son?
Very proud. I mean, when I was done, I live in Florida, And I remember the day I asked him to come to my office so I could talk to him. And I asked him, what do you want to do with your life? And he said, I want to play basketball and I want to make money. And I said, if you listen to me, I will get you there. I'm not going to go in the gym and rebound the ball and tell you how to shoot. My philosophy is if you go in there, you spend enough time in the gym and you're doing the right things, you'll figure out how to be a professional player. But I was able to guide him and help him get to where he wanted to be. So to see him now in the league going on year 7, but also playing in the Jazz organization is beyond anything I could ever expect as far as my life or happiness for him.
All right. So since your son is playing in the NBA, I guess you still follow the current NBA.
Do I follow him?
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay. So who's the best player currently in the NBA?
I would probably have to say hands down is Jay Crowder for the Utah Jazz.
Absolutely understandable.
Oh man, I hate more than anything in the world when I hear people compare Michael to LeBron to Kobe, and that's a useless point. I mean, all those guys are great players. They are. I take nothing away from them. I think you diminish what they do when you get into the barbershop argument of who's the best. And that's kind of what it is. It's barbershop talk.
All right. Once you retired from basketball, what have you been doing since? How do you keep yourself busy?
I recruit professional athletes to go to the NBA. I also recruit athletes to go to the NFL for an agency. I'm not an agent, but all I do is I get in and I work with the kids. I try to teach them financial literacy. I've written 3 books based on the first book I wrote, which is to help athletes to be professional on and off the court. I got some work with the NBA. They sent me around to teach financial literacy to those guys, and so I was able to do that for a couple of years. Now I have 3 little girls that I take care of. I split time with my ex-wife, and I recruit athletes, and I try to help them understand their investments.
All right, you just mentioned your books. Most players don't even write a single book, or maybe 1 book. You actually wrote 3. What advice would you give to a young player? What is the most important thing a player needs to work on in order to make it to the NBA?
I mean, of course, you need to work on your skill set. But I think most kids, when they get in there, I think they get overwhelmed by this sudden influence of wealth. You know, there's a lot of money that's been thrown around in professional sports nowadays, and I don't think these kids understand the responsibility and how to handle that. So I think they do a lot of delegating to financial advisors, to their agents, and that's why a lot of us, when we're done playing, 80% of professional athletes are broke within 5 years of shooting their last basket. And at some point, these kids need to learn how to handle that pressure and educate themselves. And they need to seek information and find the right people to work with. But also, you know, you have a problem with family members and friends and cousins and everybody coming out of the woodwork that now wants to ride on your train that, you know, you work so hard to get to. So I think that they need to understand how to handle those pressures. It's not just about basketball. It's actually a business.
Do you have a trading card of yourself?
Yeah.
You do? Where is it?
It's in my safe.
Wonderful. That was actually a question that I wanted to ask for quite some time. So 2 more questions and then I'll let you go. Who was your favorite player when you were a kid?
Dr. J.
Why?
Because he could fly through the air, and I figured that if I could fly like him, I'm going to be a great player. I used to be in the gym, and I would be on the free throw line. I would say, Dr. J, with 1 second to go, we need 2 free throws to ice the game, and he'd make them every time. And then one day, lo and behold, I got to meet him. So I was like a kid in a candy store. And I went up to him and I said, you know, what a pleasure it is to meet him. And I told him that, you know, you were my idol, and I looked up to him, and I still do to this day.
Yeah, that guy is so classy. It's unbelievable. Not only as a basketball player, but as a person.
Absolutely.
So the last question, since Dr. J was your favorite player, who to you is the best player who ever played in the NBA? No comparison, not comparing anybody, but who you think who was.
You know, I've sat down on the bench and I've seen Michael Jordan do things with that basketball. And for me, in my lifetime, you know, as far as golf, is Tiger Woods. Race car driving is probably, Dale Earnhardt. But for me in basketball, I mean, LeBron James doing great things. Kobe Bryant was awesome. Dr. J is one of the best ever. But for me, the way that Michael Jordan has been able to take the Jordan brand and make it $1 billion industry, and what he did on the court and everything, for me, if you put all of that together, he's the best to ever lace him up, to me.
That was a perfect answer. Wonderful. Karl, it was great to have you on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, okay? Good luck to you.